Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Is her name Katie Britt? I'm going to get to that. Well, not only her disaster of a rebuttal to Joe Biden, but the, the liberal media's over coverage of it, right? And you can't, like, she didn't do worse than this guy. He's president, right? Like, you can't ever, like, they want to compare the Republicans to this guy in an unfavorable light, and you can't, right? So I'm not sure if somebody sent me a part of this, and then I found the whole thing. President Biden chats with famous presidents, past presidents, in quotes. And so here he is. This actually happened. Well, you're going to see it.
I never spoke to so many presidents all at one time. Some of you might know what a big speech like I have to do is coming up State of the Union. Any advice you have for me in delivering my speech?
Well, sir.
Okay, so he's brought in 5 has-been Hollywood actors. Some of them A-list, some of them B-list, but they're all actors. And he's decided to ask them for advice because they're actors. Like, this is the optics of this thing. Aside from him being senile, like the optics of this thing, that he be asking actors for advice as president because you're supposed to be genuine and sincere. These are professional liars. These are people who pretend to be people like presidents. They're not presidents. Nobody would really want to elect an actor president except it happened. I would say that except it happened with Ronald Reagan, who was a horrible actor and somehow became president, right? Where they were acknowledging that these guys are just figureheads, that they just want people who can read lines and perform and act like a president and not be a president, right? So the optics are bad, but then it's even worse because Joe Biden is, senile. So he's got 4 former presidents who are actors.
In my capacity as president,
President Tom Beck in Deep Impact.
I had to deal with was a meteor. One of the things that I came out of that with in my speech to people, hope. Hope is the strongest force we have on this country.
Yeah, didn't the meteor hit the Earth, right?
The most useful and the most effective. My advice is just keep telling us how you're working for us and building hope.
Yeah, there's no hope. Look at him with his goofy smile.
Well, Mr. President, looking back at my own...
He's a... Tom, this guy's always a villain. I've never seen the show Scandal, but I assume he's not a good president, right? I assume this guy's a villain because I've never seen this guy play a hero. Again, I haven't never seen the show, but I assume he's a villain. It's in a show called Scandal.
Presidency, I behaved very badly.
Of course you do, exactly. That's what you always do. You're typecast.
In a lot of situations. In preparation for your speech, it's just there was one sort of...
Okay, so this guy plays a villain. He behaves very badly, so he must be at the center of the scandal because he's a disgraced president. So he's not even a good president. His role as an actor. I mean, this whole thing... This is great.
Piece of advice and that meant a lot to me when I was president. And so I just wanted to share that really quick with you. Tell them that you exist for them. Tell them that they make you a better man. And that's...
Are you getting teary-eyed?
That's pretty much it. Oh, and also...
Look at him smile. Why are you even listening to them? Like, you're a career politician. Gina freaking Crazy Davis, apparently she played a president.
When I used to...
That guy.
Big speeches, I would always wind down with popcorn and red wine. But I know for you that would be ice. Do that with ice cream. I highly encourage it.
I know from experience, obviously, what a tough job it is.
She plays Commander-in-Chief, President Mackenzie Allen. She sounds like she's got marbles in her mouth.
And when I was president, it seemed like
Okay, she talked like that. She always had difficulty talking, but now she's obviously had plastic surgery, so her face is pulled so tight. She's talking like a freaking crocodile.
week, There was some new crisis that I had to face.
You did a hell of a job.
Thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you. I do feel
You know, they kind of wrote a script, and like they're writing for you, so I guess this is similar.
I should just point out one thing it always bears remembering:
How long can he keep this smile up?
there's no crying in politics.
Well,
Oh, they're all laughing.
I hope is my politics doesn't make anybody else cry.
The jokes are flying.
Mr. President, from my experience of being commander-in-chief,
This guy, this scumbag MNFer, right?
I learned that having a loving partner changes everything. Love and compassion as a leader are strengths. They're not weaknesses and are key to your character. So let that
So go find yourself a loving partner, because the boop that you got is no good.
shine through in your speech. And don't forget to save a dance for the First Lady in the East Room.
We've had a lot of lines to learn ourselves. It's nice.
Independence Day. So he was president of that Independence Day movie, which sucked. Bill Pullman, and he had to fight off aliens.
To watch somebody else have to get it all together rather than us, you know. In Independence Day, I had it easy. You know, we just had invaders from outer space coming in wanting to mess with us, and that tends to unify people. You know, and
Exactly, Joe. You need an alien invasion. Like, get advice from this guy. This guy's telling you, go fake an alien invasion. Get really aliens to invade you.
I'm not so sure it was the greatest speech ever, but I did manage to say two things. One is that we can't be consumed by our petty differences, and we will be united in our common interests. And somehow these words became something to remember. So I had the thought, Mr. President, that, you know, when people look at...
You can plagiarize that speech. Go watch Independence Day and just take the speech. You've done that before. Just repeat it verbatim and pretend it's your own speech. Pretend that we're being invaded by aliens. You know, you've done that when you ran for president the first time. You got caught plagiarizing, and you've been plagiarizing ever since. We've caught you multiple times. So go ahead and plagiarize.
all that you've managed to do. They're going to remember, time will remember always the importance of your words when you say that thing about there's nothing that we can't do when we do it together.
Boom. Just say that over and over again like you always do.
Those are good ones. Best wishes to you, sir.
There's nothing beyond our capacity. I believe that. Hey, come see me at the White House.
Dwight House. Come see me at Dwight House. Dwight's house.
Seriously,
You know, Dwight from The Office. Let's go to his house.
meet you all in person. Thank you.
I'm with you,
Thank
Mr. President.
Thank you.
Kaboom.
Very much.
This is one of the best things ever. In terms of my needs, you guys delivered. Kaboom. Thank you guys for doing that for me. I mean, just amazing.
I never spoke to so many presidents all at one time. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Boom. Bringing it. So that's what the Republicans are up against, right? There's one more thing from Kamala here.
Why not do it by executive order?
The American people deserve leadership that's about fixing problems. And that's why he's going to lose in November.
Kaboom. All right, good for you, Kamala. You've already dealt with that, that you're not going to be president. Maybe you can get one of those acting jobs. Maybe you can play president on some, Showtime miniseries or something. And so that's Kamala. So this girl, something Britt, I'm not sure. We'll find out her name in a second. She, I think that's what I got next. Oh, let me show you this one thing first. I think there's one other thing here. Okay, so I was watching Louis C.K.'s video. I watch it occasionally because YouTube recommends it to me, and it's really good. It's a good comedy bit where he talks about Goodwill Hunting, and he just mocks the crap out of that scene with the "How do you like them apples?" Right? It's I don't want to wreck the bit, but there's good jokes in there. And because I watched that, the following day or a couple days later, it recommended me a video that Ben Affleck was asked if there's any jealousy between him and Matt. There was a competition over who got to play the character of Will in that movie, right? And then I watched a little bit of that, and then this was recommended. Matt Damon would have sold Good Will Hunting for a piece of chicken. This is Oprah Winfrey interviewing them. And so I watched a little bit of this. I don't know why, but I'm glad I did. You know, it's just one of those things where you watch one thing and before you know it, you're, going down a rabbit hole. But Ben Affleck said this. He was apparently living on Matt Damon's couch. He was sleeping on Matt Damon's couch. Robin Williams is also there, and he says this.
I was 8, Robin was 32, and he and the rest of the NAMBLA guys took us in. And it was really
So you've been like buddies and lived in 10 different...
So he said, I was 8, and Robin was 32, and he and the rest of the NAMBLA guys took me to... He made a NAMBLA joke, which I believe is a joke. I don't think it actually happened, but who knows, right? But he just made a NAMBLA joke. And Robin Williams and the rest of... And, they're all laughing at it. That he lived with the NAMBLA guys in some apartment with Robin Williams. And so that happened. All right, let's get to this Britt woman here.
His inner Joe Biden, you really got that sense of authenticity. Katie Britt was like the over-emoting ham of an actor. I just was so surprised to see it.
Now, this school wants you to believe that Joe Biden is authentic. Has anybody ever accused Joe Biden of being authentic, right? He's a fake, smiling, lifelong politician. There's nothing sincere about him. He often has to say that, like, no, I'm not lying. No, I'm being serious. No, this is not a joke, right? I'm not being salacious, so he says these things all the time. Because no one believes him because he's just a lying scumbag politician. To say that he is more authentic is just an absolute joke. There's some background noise. I don't know. It sounds like water. I taped this in the living room. I don't know why it sounds like a shower's going, but it wasn't. But also that's, I think the oven. So there's some background noise here.
And then just to add insult to injury, Rav, really a kitchen? Putting a woman in the kitchen on International Women's Day? I mean, it's just horrible.
So I cooked the majority of meals for my family. I did that towards the end of my first marriage when my ex was sick. And then it continued on when she left. And now, because I work at home, I do this. I have better access to cooking food, right? And I'm not ashamed of being in the kitchen, right? Like, or whatever. I mean, it's just, you got to do what you got to do to survive. Everyone should know how to cook. Everyone needs some level of ability to prepare food for themselves. If not, grow food and be able to process food, right? We're completely divorced from that process. Some people don't even know how to cook the simplest things. They don't know how to fry an egg. And so, I mean, the kitchen is not anything to be ashamed of. And especially for women, right? Women who are cooking loving meals for their family, it's a good thing. It's much more important than some goofy job or being this like ghoulish woman on this, on this TV show, which you think she's a success and so much better than a stay-at-home housewife. Because moms are, like I said before, they're the most important role other than like a highly developed spiritual person like a saint, which is rare to come by. And that's not a role that you seek. It's a role that, befalls on you if you become a spiritual person. But moms teach kids how to love. Moms are the social arbiters. Moms keep their men in check in terms of their, desire to go off for war, make bad decisions. There's so many different roles a mom plays historically in every culture except for this one, where they're trying to get rid of the mom, where they're minimizing the mom, right? Oh, you're just a mom. That's like a saying. You can search it. Just a mom, right? Where women have to apologize for not having some stupid job that, makes money. Sure, money's great. But, being a mom is so much more. And this is a conservative woman in, Alabama who she's a Christian woman, traditional. And so it's totally appropriate for her to be in a kitchen. It's stupid. The liberals and Democrats are mocking this like it's some horrific gaffe, right? These politicians go to these dens of iniquity, right? Hunter Biden. Why don't we go with Hunter Biden? Why don't you go in some champagne room some private room in some strip club somewhere and have Hunter Biden give a speech. That would be so much more appropriate, right, than a kitchen. That'd be so much better than a kitchen. His all these things. I mean, these people are depraved, and a kitchen represents, where a family has to eat and, some sort of American traditional type of, behavior. But this is something that was talked about all over the media, this idea of being in the kitchen. It became up over and over again. Like, this was a horrible choice to be in a kitchen. A woman in a kitchen? Oh, my God. It's like putting her back in slavery or something. She's choosing to be there. She's choosing to make meals for her family. I mean, she's probably not, because she's a senator. She probably has a cook. It's probably all fake. But, it's not staged. For the audience that they're trying to reach, it's not staged in a bad location. It serves a purpose because she's talking to families and moms here. I mean, that was the idea from behind the speech. The speech is horrible, and she's definitely inauthentic and smiling and whispering. I'll get into that in a moment. But in terms of the setting, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Okay, Katie Britt was bad, and I'll show you that in a moment. But I've never seen one of these things that I would say was good. I mean, even back before I was a truther. Politicians, I haven't seen that many good speeches in my lifetime from politicians. I mean, certainly no great ones. And, politics is such a dumbed down situation. Like, they're appealing to the lowest common denominator of intellect and, the people that they uneducated and ill-informed and asleep. It's the consciousness more than anything. I mean, it's not just stupidity, but it's consciousness. The level of consciousness that you're not going to hear something brilliant because they don't appeal to brilliant people, right? I mean, that's, just the way it is. That brilliance isn't a part of this. I just covered this movie. Well, I actually talk about this later. I did a voiceover. I got one more thing to cover with Joe Rogan thing about the second coming of Jesus, right? So I get into that at the end of this video. I've never seen any of these speeches that are good because they're always pandering to the people that are really into being Democrats and the people who are really into being Republicans, right? They're always appealing to, they want to appeal to the independents as well, but these things are always very, partisan. The State of the Union and all the rest of it. And so it's bad what she does, and she's, kind of corny, and I just watched a little bit of her thing, and I'm going to mock her because she deserves to be mocked. But, the obsession with these things, the right wing is going to be obsessed with Biden, as they already are to some extent. And, he did a good job for him, but it's still horrible, because he's senile. And so you don't have anything to, it's the ultimate of being in a glass house. You guys have elected and are pushing out a candidate that everyone knows is senile. And he wasn't that great beforehand. He was a career politician with very questionable character. And now he's, worse. So he was never great. He was never a great man. He was never a great politician. He just hung around, somehow was made vice president, and they figured he was the best option to beat Trump. Plus, he was the most owned, right, because of his corruption. They knew they could get away with anything with Biden. The people control the system. Like, he'd let them do anything. Biden has no moral compass. Not that Trump does or these other people, but, Trump is difficult in his own way, right? Biden was just write a blank check to the people that control him, which we know has happened. But either way, they all suck. And when you have a guy like Biden, then you can't do this, right? But they do it anyway.
Senator Katie Britt was an excellent choice to deliver the response to the State of the Union. At 42 years old, she is the youngest Republican woman ever elected to the Senate, the first woman senator from Alabama. Britt's a mother of two. She's married to a former NFL player. She's widely considered to be a rising political star with genuine political acumen. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina even suggested that, quote, she represents the future of the Republican Party. The party clearly expected her to knock it out of the park. The New York Times reports that a close ally of Senator Britt sent talking points to conservative influencers ahead of the speech, suggesting words.
Okay, so they thought she was going to be great. Then he shows a clip of her here, which I'm going to show you anyway.
we hear you and we stand with you.
The Daily Beast described the speech as, quote, bizarrely delivered with an over-the-top dramatic cadence that left political operatives and observers struggling to make sense of it. The performance was so bad that some Republicans watched the high-profile speech with a grimace. According to one strategist, everyone's effing losing it. It's one of our biggest disasters ever.
Okay, so you had Trump. Trump was a nightmare in various ways, especially for everyone who wasn't a Trumper. And they've had, horrible candidates over the years. The Bushes were just absolutely creepy and weird, and, the whole thing. Reagan was an actor. And you're running against Joe Biden. But let's go to her speech here because, she did do a poor job.
Good evening, America. My name is Katie Britt, and I have the honor of serving the people of the great state of Alabama in the United States Senate.
Where's your Alabama accent? Why does she not have an Alabama accent? The accents in America are great. They're all great. Some of them are obnoxious, like Chicago and Boston, New York. Some of them are, there's Midwestern accents is the way that everyone tries to talk. And, Western accents and Southern accents, and there are all these different ones, and, all these things. People from Wisconsin and, all these, they're just great. And they always try to get rid of the accent. But at Alabama, how does she get, she's got a cross work in here.
However, that's not the job that matters most. I am a proud wife and mom of 2 school-aged kids. My daughter Bennett and my son Ridgway are why I ran for the Senate. I'm worried about their future and the future of children in every corner of our nation.
Remember when Trump's son's girlfriend gave that speech? Let me see if I can find the speech here.
Good evening, America. I'm Kimberly Guilfoyle. I speak to you tonight as a mother, a former prosecutor, a Latina, and a proud American.
Kaboom! Remember this? She went for it, remember?
And yes, a proud supporter of President Donald J. Trump. As a first-generation American, I know how dangerous their socialist agenda is. My mother, Mercedes, was a special education teacher from Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. My father...
It's interesting how she slips into a Spanish accent, again, which she doesn't have. But she slips into it, right? Just embrace the accent. The accents are great.
Also an immigrant, came to this nation in pursuit of the American dream. Now I consider it my duty to fight to protect that dream. Rioters must not be allowed to destroy our cities.
Kaboom!
Human sex drug traffickers should not be allowed to cross our...
Okay, but then let's go to the very end where she...
That you believe in. Stand for an American president who is fearless, who believes in you, and who loves this country and will fight for her. President Trump is the leader who will rebuild the promise of America and ensure that every citizen can realize their American dream. Ladies and gentlemen, leaders and fighters for freedom and liberty and the American dream, the best is yet to come.
So that was great, right? The problem that Katie Britt is having here, I once attempted years ago to talk to the camera. I could hold the camera and walk around my yard and talk like I'm talking here. I get paid for talking to myself, basically. I recognize there's an audience and I can, connect with people and make it sound like I'm talking to you. But when the camera's on, it's different. And I suck at it. I tried it and I'm just not good because you're pretending the camera is a person. Whereas, right now I'm imagining people to some extent. It's just there that someday somebody's going to listen to this, but I don't even think about it that much. And I'm just relaxed and I'm able to, there's a difference between being on radio and being on TV. And people who talk to a camera, it's people aren't good at it. I mean, actors and actresses, they have to get into their character and forget the cameras are there. But when you're a newscaster or you're a politician and you're talking to the camera and there's no audience, it's difficult. Now, if there's a few people in the room or whatever it is, it's better. But she clearly wasn't prepared for this. And Kimberly Guilfoyle is a good example of that. They did this to Howard Dean when he gave the Howard Dean yell. And he was in a crowd. Take a look at that.
If you had told us 1 year ago that we were going to come in third in Iowa, we would have given anything for that. And you know something?
You're about to wreck your whole campaign here?
Michigan! And then we're going to Washington, D.C. to take back the White House! Ah!
Okay, so that was to a crowd, and he lost, They played that over and over again, the scream. And they took out there's some, Fuchsi's over there. And they, anyways. So that happened. Let's get back to the speech here.
And that's why I invited you into our home tonight. Like so many families across America, my husband Wesley and I just watched President Biden's State of the Union address from our living room. And what we saw was the performance of a permanent politician who has actually been in office for longer than I've been alive.
No way, Katie. Sadly, it's not true.
One thing.
The problem is, it's the smile. They're all used to fake smiling. Yeah, I'm not good at fake smiling. There's a picture I used to use. I don't know if it's still on any of these things. It's a picture I took in India, and I was there, and I just figured out how to fake smile. I would walk by people that I knew when I was supposed to smile, and I would get self-conscious, and it would make some kind of weird expression that probably was more like a grimace. But I've never mastered the art of fake smiling. And, people think I look mad all the time or angry. Lots of times I feel happy, and they just, I'm not very approachable. But these guys are great at fake smiling. Like, why are you smiling, Katie? Why are you smiling? And, Biden smiled through that whole, those guys were talking, and he put on a fake smile. And it's, a smile is something that comes to your face because it's expression of something. But people learn to fake smile, and it's expected of them. And they do it all the time, right? They're smiling for no reason. And so it becomes disingenuous. And these politicians are, big on it because people look better when they smile. It's nice to see somebody smiling at you. But it's better when they are doing it for a reason. Like they're happy to see you, which usually isn't the case. And so she's putting on this fake smile, and she's kind of whispering, which is a problem, right? Because, the whole thing's just a joke and a lie, right? It's all performative. I mean, all of these things.
Thing was quite clear, though. President Biden just doesn't get it. He's out of touch. Under his administration, families are worse off, our communities are less safe, and our country is less secure.
So the whisper, she's nervous, and she seems to be a little bit out of breath. So she's trying to talk calmly, but her heart is racing, right?
I just wish he understood what real families are facing around kitchen tables just like this one. This is where our family has tough conversations. It's where we make hard decisions.
This is going to play well with Republican women. I mean, this idea that it's in a kitchen, like that's the worst thing ever, right? like that other ghoul, right? But this will play with Republican conservative women, right? Which is what the target is. I mean, I guess to some extent independents. But, even with the fake smile, even with her nervousness, even with her, awkwardness here, she's still better than the senile Biden. For one, she's not president, but she is better. I mean, if I had to hire her for anything, or I had to hire Biden for anything, I don't think there's a situation where I'd hire Biden over her, right? Or would you expect her to do a better job? Sure. She's alert. She's, aware, awake. She's younger. And she's not senile. And she's not creepy. right? But Biden has shown lapses. My wife pointed out, she said that I said something kind of brilliant, that when you judge somebody about their senility, you don't judge them by their lucid moments. I mean, especially if it's a job or something. Like if you have an elderly person who is having moments where they hallucinate or their perception of their brains are glitching out, right? You can't let them drive. And even though they have lucid moments where they could drive, it's not that they can't drive. It's that you have to take into consideration the bad moments, and that one of these, days they're going to have a bad moment while they're driving. And you can't risk that. You can't risk other people's safety on somebody that's showing you that they're impaired, right? And so Biden has shown you in his bad moments that, he's not capable. This is socially awkward. And again, it's an awkward situation. She's never done something like this before. And it's kind of weird. And, the whispering, it's pretty cringy. But at least she's mentally competent, right? Like I would trust her to do a better job than Joe Biden. I mean, in presidency or any of these other things, right? Because she's just, younger, and she hasn't shown any creepy tendencies as far as I know. We've never heard of any scandal. And so she would be better. She's doing a better job here than Biden just for those reasons alone, right?
It's where we share the good, the bad, and the ugly of our days. It's where we laugh together. And it's where we hold each other's hands and pray for.
This is like one of those, like watching one of those, I can't, those where they sell you stuff. Why can't I remember the QVC, right? QVC, I had to go look it up. Like QVC kind of stuff. Like I've done this. I make fun of these, It's like she's trying to sell you some cubic zirconian earrings.
For God's guidance. And many nights, to be honest, it's where Wesley and I worry. I know we're not alone. And so tonight, the American family needs to have a tough conversation, because the truth is, we're all worried about the future of our nation.
Oh, come on. There's no tough conversation. People know he's senile, and they're dealing with it one way or another. The Democrats have to, hold their nose because of their hatred of Trump and either vote for Biden or protest this thing. And then, of course, it's just like with Morning Joe that says that that Trump's senile because he said over and over he's running against Obama. And I'm like, you got a guy who's like wearing diapers. Like, your candidate's in diapers. But anyways, CNN reacted to this woman here. Okay, so this was supposed to be about Katie Britt. It says, it was just terrible. Journalists criticized Britt's GOP response. But here they're talking about Biden's speech.
When it was said at the time, people didn't like that speech at all. But it's also the greatest speech.
It's Carrie Swisher.
In history. I would give him a 9 on style. And
a 9 on style. Are you serious?
7 on substance.
Why? 7.
Well, a 9 because I think he did what he was supposed to do. The GOP had set the bar at corpse, and therefore he looked fantastic. So
yeah, as opposed to a corpse, it's a 9. If you're saying they didn't set the bar, he has bad moments. He's senile, and so did he overperform? Did he have as many gaffes as he normally has? No, but of course they gave him his talkie pills or whatever. But that's. You can't say because of the GOP setting it at corpse. That's what I said. They lowered expectations, but it wasn't. It was a 1, maybe a 2. A 2 just because it was better than normal. Like that's still giving him, on style. He's a senile old man, right? Like he's not somebody. We've accepted him as being the president. Even if you haven't accepted him, you've accepted him. Like we now have because they're all so bad, right? And that he is the president. And so you get used to somebody sucking, but that doesn't mean it didn't suck, right? Like just because you've lowered expectations and standards.
he gets a 9 and 10 because it's not the Gettysburg Address. For 7 is because he didn't say a lot. There wasn't a lot. It was a campaign speech, essentially.
That's exactly what it was. Sarah, what are the scores?
So on Style, I'm going to go with 9 as well. But again, it's because of the low expectations. If it was the Gettysburg Address as the bar, I'd go with like a 4 because that's not where the bar was. On substance, I'll probably go with a 6. I'm more to the center right than Joe Biden, but
Okay, so I mean, it's a 1 or a 2. Like you can't even, you can't if you're not going to negative numbers. If you have to give him something, it'd be a 1 or a 2. And only because he did better than normal would it be a 2.
You the opportunity. What was your grade, your score for Senator Katie Britt's GOP response?
Less than 0. It was as if someone put into chat.
Less than 0. Are you serious? Less than 0. It was good, comfortable, and awkward, but she was better than Biden. Like, just, she had a pulse and she was coherent. She wasn't, she wasn't lost in confusion land. She didn't look like a deer in headlights. I mean, she had some, it was awkward, it's performative, it was goofy. It's certainly at least a 3, right? If Biden's a 1, then hers was a 3.
ChatGPT. Stepford wife meets Weird Kitchen meets someone who failed at getting the lead in the high
Weird Kitchen. It was a Weird Kitchen?
school play. It was terrible. It was just terrible.
So we always make too big a deal, overemphasize the importance of these speeches. It's a speech, it's given, and it ends 2 weeks from.
Okay, so that, again, this is ridiculous, right? Like, they're just, at some point you got to realize you're a shill and you suck as a human being. Like, if you're denying Biden's senility, and you've been doing it since 2019, and forget how much you hate the Republicans, your guy wears diapers, right? Like, that's the Republicans, Trump's slogan should be, your guy wears diapers. If I was running as a third-party candidate, because Trump's getting up there, that would be my slogan. I might be an a-hole, but your candidates wear diapers. the other guys wear diapers, right?
I think for real. Like, if he came back now, it'd be great. Like, Jesus, if you're thinking about coming back
right now,
now's a good time.
Yeah, pretty soon, yeah.
Now's a good time. We're kind of.
Okay, so somebody has sent me the Joe Rogan, whatever his name is, Aaron Rodgers video before. And I really couldn't get into it. Then somebody sent me it again, and I watched the very beginning, and I wanted to, while it was fresh, I made a 20-some minute voiceover about it. The rest of the video the person sent me was just a bunch of, I don't know what it was. I guess maybe it was a truther video, I don't know. It was not interesting to me. And so I've already made the voiceover for this, but I want to say this just in case I didn't say it. I can't remember exactly everything in the voiceover from yesterday that you're about to hear. But the one thing I want to say is the premise, the idea that you would want Jesus to come back to save the world. He didn't save it the first time. He couldn't save himself from being crucified. He couldn't save, you could say, all right, that was part of his destiny. But he didn't save his disciples either. And, bad times set in. For Christians. Christians were persecuted for a number of years. Usually when a spiritual master came, with Krishna it was the same thing. After the Mahabharata, things got bad, right? Things, because the Kali brought in the Kali Yuga. But oftentimes a saint comes and things don't improve materially. In fact, they shouldn't. Biblically, the second coming of Jesus, in the book of Revelation, they have this horn that blows. There's a trumpet that blows from heaven, and all the good Christians go to heaven, and everyone else is effed, and it becomes a post-apocalyptic, demonic hellscape here. I mean, that's what it says in Revelations. And so, but even if you don't believe in the Bible, Jesus didn't come to fix anything in the material world. Although he was kind of a social reformer, he wasn't purely spiritual. He was more of a, somewhat social reformer / spiritual person. Like a combination of those two things, but he didn't fix anything because you can't. And if he didn't fix it before, he's not going to fix it now, right? And so the idea that this is going to be fixed by some godly intervention, why would God intervene? Like, God wants this system to be destroyed, right? The system is not in accordance with the divine principles and laws. And so thinking that divinity will save you and God will save it is ridiculous because it's not a godly system. It's a system that's marked for destruction because of its blasphemous nature, right? It goes against the will of the creation. It's unnatural, and it's a lie. It's a deception. So eventually the lie, which all lies, have to be, cleansed and has to be removed from the system. Any kind of delusion, demonic illusion or delusion that people are under, eventually is going to be, seen for what it is. And so God isn't going to save you, isn't going to save the system. God can help you get something out of your life and move spiritually, but isn't going to guarantee your lifestyle. God isn't coming to save your lifestyle, right? Jesus is not coming to save your lifestyle. But anyways, here's my voiceover from yesterday. Okay, so I'm not going to get to this video till tomorrow, but somebody sent me something and I already seen it. I watched maybe a few minutes of it. Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers talking about the second coming of Jesus, right? And so I wanted to talk about spiritual approach and the various religions and the masters of those religions, right? And so whatever you're born into at a very young age, you are told things like if you're born into Christianity, say, very specifically because Jesus is more hyped, more branded than any other religious figure. And you're told that Jesus is God's only son, that he died for you, died for your sins sometime in the past. And the only way that you can find God and go to heaven is to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And one of the sins that you might commit along the way is to look at any other religion and any other spiritual path, because doing so, you have now violated that commitment you've made to accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and so you're banned from heaven. And everybody else in every other religion and every other spiritual organization and all the people that lived before Jesus and all the people who will live long after Christianity is wiped from this face of the earth, which is inevitable like everything else, all those people are not going to heaven. They're doomed to eternal hell, even if they never heard of Christianity. All these, somebody sent me a video of an Aboriginal culture in the middle of the Amazon that's never seen people before. And so people said, hey, I mean, not people, but, everybody else, because they're people too. I didn't mean to infer they weren't people. But, there's these cultures of people that have never been in contact with other people, with other cultures, with anything outside of their own small tribe. And they decide, hey, look, we're great. Why don't you guys meet us? What could happen to you guys? I mean, what bad thing could happen to you guys once you meet the rest of us? I didn't watch the video, but I've seen these things before. Somebody said it was like on Amazon or something. But anyways, those people are all going to hell. My mom said this years ago, and I didn't know what she was talking about at the time. I was in 8th grade, and we were at some charismatic, she did this charismatic Catholic Christian thing. I don't know if it was just specifically Catholics, but it was a kind of a spiritual wing of American Christianity, Catholicism or something. And we were in, I think, Ottawa, Canada, and there was these Native American people dressed up in their traditional whatever it was. My mom said, look at these beautiful people. I can't believe they're going to hell. She was doubting that teaching of John 3:16. She goes, these people aren't going to hell. She had a devout Catholic her whole life. She said the rosary. She read the book. She was really into Catholicism and Jesus and, all of it, right? But she didn't believe in that teaching when she saw these people, and she said, these people aren't going to hell. She just, she was seeing them as spiritual beings who had their own spiritual practice, and, they were also connected to God. She later did the Sajmarg meditation. She could really feel the transmission. She met the third master of the system, Charji, which was an interesting experience, right? I introduced her to him, right? But there's, levels of understanding that there's bullshit in your tradition. And if any organization tells you that this is the only path to God, because you can connect to God without anything, without anybody. God is inside of you. God's everywhere. So there's people who have lived in, systems where the idea of God wasn't even there, and they still were able to connect to God. The concept of God that we have now, the definition of God through religions and whatever people have in terms of knowledge of God, isn't necessary to connect to God, because God's a feeling of love. And even if they didn't have a word for God or didn't have a religious structure or a dogma, people have been connecting to God all the time. Even atheists connect to God unbeknownst to them, because divinity is within them. Love, if they feel love, they feel God. And they might not, understand that or feel that or want to put a name on it, but they still feel love. I mean, if an atheist feels love, then they have a relationship with God. Whether they want to believe in God or not, doesn't matter. They certainly can't deny their own experience of the divinity, the love that they feel. And they can attribute that to any number of mental or psychological conditions, but it's something that is beyond a person, right? A person is made of love at your base, at your foundation, but it's not something that you can explain or contain or control or anything like that. It's a feeling. It's there, it comes, it goes, it's of its own volition. You can cultivate the circumstances and the conditions where you can feel love. And of course, there's a transmission available in the Sizemore system that I do, which is divine love that comes to you. But even then, are you receptive to receive it? Do you believe you deserve to? There's all kinds of ways that people have of blocking love or perverting love or denying love or whatever. But getting back to the central point. So if you grew up as a Christian, you're predisposed to think that Jesus is the big guy. And one of the reasons that that's backed by popular belief is that Christianity is kicking ass in the material world. It's the most populated religion. It's some 2 billion people, whatever it is, right? 1 point something billion, I don't know. 2.38 billion people. So it's well over a fourth of the people, right? Maybe is that even a third? I don't know how many that is. It's between a third and a fourth. So it's, quite a number of people, right? 1 out of every 3.5 people is a Christian. And so even outside of Christianity, people know that certain America is a Christian country, and then European countries that were dominant before have dominated the world. So it looks like Christ is more powerful. My God, our God, is more powerful than their God because of the materialistic aspects of the wealth that Christians have accumulated and the power that they have, right? You have Christian privilege. And so that's a very immature way of looking at it, because material success has nothing to do with your religious practice in terms of, being better than other religious practices, right? The result of anything that's material is not at all a part of the efficacy of your system, your spiritual system. If you are blessed materially, that doesn't mean that your spiritual practice is great or better than other spiritual practices where people who do those practices live in poverty. It's a horrible way to try to say, hey, look at Christianity's better because look at how rich and powerful Christian countries are and Christian people are. That's trying to validate something that's spiritual with something that's material. I benefited from my Catholic upbringing. I didn't have any pedo priests. I had nuns. I had good relationship with nuns. Nuns used to come over to my house and do the prayer meeting. Some of them were really nice, sweet ladies. One particular was a real spiritual. They refer to as her sister Saint Anne. She was, she was named Sister Anne, like that's how they do it. Sister Mary, Sister Anne, whatever. A lot of Sister Marys. But they called her Sister Saint Anne because she was, of all the nuns in that, wherever she lived in that nun house, wherever it was, right, years and years ago, she stood out. Like every nun respected her as being a real spiritual seeker. So they all called her Sister Saint Anne because they all thought she was a saint, right? So I had a good relationship with them. Years and years ago, I was 14 years old, and me and my friends, there was these old tobacco barns that had been abandoned, and they had all this plywood in them, like, old kind of plywood that wasn't being used. And so we stole it. My friends did. And we built half pipes, a skateboarding half pipe. I was never good at skateboarding. And I was small for my age. Everyone in my family looks about 10 or 15 years younger than we actually are. Like I'm 60, and I don't know what people would think I am in terms of my age, but they wouldn't think I'm almost going to be 60, right? Because just that's genetics. I had a grandmother who lived to 98, I think, 98 or 99. And then my other two grandparents lived into their 90s. And then my grandfather, the one who was the strongest of all of them, fought in 2 world wars and, smoked like a chimney, died of lung cancer. He probably could have outlived them all, right, based on his physical strength. So we have longevity in our family. And we also don't fully grow. And I was still growing when I was like 21 years old. So I'm about 6'1", 6'2" now. 6'1 and a half, almost 6'2". And when I graduated high school, I was like 5'9". And so maybe 5'10" or whatever. But I grew 3 inches post high school. But when I started high school as a freshman, I was one of the smallest kids. And I was also a summer birth, right? So I wasn't, some kids turned, whatever it was, that a year older during the school year, but I didn't turn, that age till the summer. So kids born in this late part of the year, the summer, were often, just a little bit younger than everybody else, right? Like a lot of the kids would turn 15 during the school year. But me, I was, I wouldn't be 15 until the summer, right? But I was just shorter than most of the kids. I weighed like 100 pounds. I was like 5 feet tall. And my friends had a beer party, and I was not, a partier then. And one of these seniors who was skateboarding with us had a cake party over his house, and I played beer pong. And I drank like one sort of foreign beer, like a Heineken or these kind of, not Heineken, but like I forget what it was called. Whatever, one of these European beers, which were higher in alcohol. Then we played beer pong, and I drank a lot of beer for a small kid. And my parents were having a prayer meeting, and it was a split level ranch. So, there was a door that the front door was right by a staircase, and you came in the front door, and you'd either go up the staircase to the upper floor, or you'd go into the finished basement. And and these people were in the living room by the staircase having a prayer meeting. And I was so drunk I couldn't even like walk or see straight. Like I climbed up the stairs like on my hands and knees and was spewing out alcohol, like, whatever it was. And I just staggered in there in a prayer meeting. I staggered in drunk. Like the first time that I ever got drunk, and I went into my room and I just basically vomited all night. And there was just beer, like just, whatever. It was mostly just beer on my floor. Like it just stunk like beer in my room for like a year. But anyways, that's just a little sidebar. But you're born into a religion, and you think that religion, because you hear it at a young age, you just think Jesus is higher developed than the rest of the saints and people that lived in the world. But it's simply not the case. And I can say that fairly objectively. I have nothing against Jesus. I have nothing against Christianity, just because I've done other things, right? Specifically the Sajmarg meditation, and I've understood the history, like the discovery of the soul. That was something that came from India. All the religions today are based in the Indian religion, which is now known as Hinduism, but used to be something else. Like it's not great now, but it used to be great. And it was here thousands upon thousands of years before any of these other religions. All those religions come from the same part of the world, right? Judaism and Islam are very close to India. You look at the area in the Middle East, it's very close to India. And there was a time where Indian empire expanded and was, a part of that whole region. There was a time, like when the Mahabharata was, that India was, was a part of, like, all those areas were a part of India. Like what was called Bharat was far, it extended far beyond what is now, the Indian country. It was into Africa and Europe and I guess parts of Russia, and then all the way close to where China is, right? And China, where Buddhism came from, that area right next to, if you see the map, I'm not going to show you the map here, but if you look at a map where Nepal is and these countries in the Himalayas, the Buddha was originally an Indian prince. So Buddhism literally came from India, and Buddha was born a Hindu. He was born into the Hindu culture, right? And so that's where all these religions are tied in. Of course, there's lots of Muslims in Pakistan and India because there's Muslims in that area. But Indian religion was the first one. And all the religions got their ideas about a soul and all these things from the Indian religion. It was there first. And that's a fact. You can, it's not like debatable. You can trace back the history. And, there's evidence, and I fully believe that Jesus went to India and received spiritual training in India. So there's, whatever he got wasn't because of some divine birth. Like he worked for what he got, which is actually better. But in every religion, the idea is that God created the universe. So we're all God's children. That's part of the biblical history, that God made the universe, and that therefore God is in every one of us. God is every particle, every atom. Part of it is created out of the divine energy, or it's all created out of the divine energy, and we're all children of God. So there's no one child of God. Sitting up in heaven, there's no heaven in this way of thinking, because heaven's everywhere, because God's everywhere. There's different realms beyond death that are etheric, but they're not a place, right? Heaven's not a place. It's a condition, and it's an approach. You get into heaven by being more and more subtle and embracing the divinity within you on a higher level, and leaving the grossness and the selfishness and the ego behind. Like you can experience heaven on earth, and Jesus said it himself, the kingdom of heaven is within. What do you think he meant by that? That it's not a place. And that's, a teaching I'm surprised they left in there. It's Jesus' most redeemable teaching. But Jesus isn't that highly developed. And there's things, I am that I am is a very, it's not a spiritual statement. Like it's a brag, right? I am that I am is something a spiritual person doesn't say, right? He certainly was spiritual, but he wasn't as evolved as the Christians would like, wish he was. But, one of the things that I've seen over and over again, the higher developed souls, the higher developed saints, I just watched this movie yesterday. I was talking about on my other channel. We watched this movie called American Fiction. Brilliant movie. I was surprised it was so good. And it's about an African-American author who, wants to write beyond his cultural identity. He wants to write as a writer, not as a black writer, right? He just wants to be a writer. And he wants to write, he's really educated, he's kind of brilliant. And his agent is like basically convincing him to be a sellout. And he has, this is kind of a spoiler alert, but not really. So, and the agent brings out 3 bottles of Johnny Walker whiskey. One of them's like black label, blue label, and the other one's red label. Blue label's the expensive one. He says, that the majority of people drink the cheapest one. He said, but the only good one is the blue label. But people can't afford that. That's just for the connoisseurs. And most people are just going to buy the cheapest one, right? And he is making a reference to that you can write educated, well-written books, but no one's going to buy them. The majority of people want smut. They want lower consciousness stuff. And that, it's a great metaphor for spirituality. That the saints that are just a little bit spiritual, the higher developed souls that are just, their teachings are just, kind of on the remedial entry-level spiritual teachings, make the best religious figures. Because they're not so far above you. But the ones that are really spiritually developed are not going to connect with the majority of people because they're beyond even people being able to understand their basic teachings, never mind their advanced teachings. And so that's one of the reasons the religions that are, Islam and Christianity have proliferated so much. Like, there are good teachings in there, but they're just entry-level teachings to the, the spiritual world. And Jesus was, he was at the first rung of spirituality, and I've documented this before. And if this is hard for Christians to accept, or even, to accept the idea that someone believes this, I don't expect you to believe this. I'm not trying to sell you or convince you of something. I'm just saying this is my understanding. Like, I tell the truth here in the way I see it. And you could say, well, I'm prejudiced towards the thing that I do. Sure. But I grew up as a Christian, right? And the Sajmark system of meditation has won me over through how it has benefited me, and, the way that it's elevated me, and how I feel different inside, and how I'm a better person inside, or a more spiritual person inside, because of the cleaning and transmission. And also, when the current master of the Sajmark system, now Heartfulness, Daji, went south and and fell, I now have a whole YouTube channel devoted to exposing him, right? And even though I knew him personally, and I could have got a deal from him. I mean, when they saw that I was making videos, they wanted to do anything to shut me up. I could have asked for anything from them, right? But I didn't, because I tell the truth here, and I don't sell out, like that kind of selling out or whatever, right? We all sell out, and I want to cover this. Maybe I'll talk about this hopefully in the beginning of the video somewhere, so I don't go. But if I've said it already, you know what I'm talking about. If I haven't, hopefully I'll remember to do that. But we all sell out in the sense that we all indulge in this decadent system, and we're addicted to certain things in the system. And therefore, the system owns us to whatever extent, right? And so there's that form of selling out. But then there's, blatantly selling out where that something's wrong, or something's, something is evil or whatever, and you take money to not say anything about it. Like, that's... And I have no interest in that. But what I'm saying here is, for every Christian who has not confronted the problems with their religion, or every person who's grown up in a religion and hasn't confronted the hypocrisy and the part of the religion that has nothing to do with God, in fact, blocks you from connecting to God, you aren't on my level in that area, because I've done that. I did it with leaving Christianity behind, because, it's like transcending. It's what Jesus did. Jesus was born a Jew, and he transcended his religion and became something else. People who transcend their religions become spiritual. That's what you have to do. And people who haven't done that aren't spiritual yet. They haven't transcended the upbringing. Not that you leave everything behind. You don't have to be like, F you to your religion, but you recognize its limitations. You recognize that it isn't what it says it is, and that there is a deeper, higher level, and that's being a spiritual person. And Jesus did that to some extent, and he received some spiritual advancement and spiritual approach. And approach is how close you get to God. But Jesus wasn't that far along the spiritual path. And so this idea of a second coming, and I believe that Jesus is already incarnated on planet Earth, like it might be somebody, I don't know, famous or not, I don't know. But if not, there are all these higher developed souls are coming down for this specific time, because of, it's a big time on planet Earth, spiritually. And so I have, reason to believe that Jesus is among us or whatever. It still doesn't matter, because Jesus wasn't that far along. And when he was alive, he couldn't even prevent his own crucifixion, or the crucifixion of his disciples, and the bastardization of his teachings. He couldn't stop any of that stuff. So what makes you think that he'll stop something now, right? Like, it's not, we have freedom of choice. And so our choice right now is self-destruction. That's the choice on the table. And it's just how close we get to that. And I don't even know about that. But in terms of all this, understanding that there's a higher and a lower, like this great teaching from the Sajmark tradition, the third master, Master Charji, said this, that you have to understand that the lowest part of the higher, which is the spiritual, is higher than the highest part of the lower, which is material. And so you could be the most powerful person in the world and the richest person, but you're still below a homeless guy who's spiritual, right? A person who's on the lowest level of material, even someone who's just on the cusp of their spiritual, they're just starting, they're putting their foot on the first rung. They're not yet even, beginning to climb, but they've got their foot up at least. is still higher than all the people that don't even know there's a ladder, but they're doing great financially or materially. They're not even, capable of even contemplating being a spiritual person. And so none of these things, this talk that they're doing, Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers, it's again guys who are very materialistic and physical in their approach to life, rich guys who are, a part of the athletic community and things like this, and people who go on adventures and do things, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not, I know Joe Rogan does ayahuasca and Aaron Rodgers does a lot of these new age spiritual things, but, they're not real spiritual stuff yet, right? And of course, Jesus is going to look great to them because that's what they grew up with or whatever they're talking about, but there's something much beyond Christianity. Christianity is very limited. It's limited in its approach. It's limited in its teaching. And the master himself of that system is limited. And there's no children. There's no one son of God. We're all children of God. And so that whole teaching is BS, and you can connect to God. In fact, Christianity is not great to help people connect to God. It's a barrier between you and connecting to God. It limits you. If that's what you can do, then great. I'm not saying don't do something else if that's all, There are good things about it. I'm not running it down completely. But, there is a better way for people who can do it. There is a higher level. And if you can access that higher level, it's your duty to find that higher level and do it, right? The Sajmarg meditation that I do, Gratefulness meditation that we do, is essentially, it has one goal, and that's to help people connect to the divinity within them. And even with that, we've seen the failure of Daji and these other, so it is what it is. You can't compensate for the failure and the low nature of human beings. Anyways, I just wanted to say that while it was fresh in my mind, but I'll put this in the video tomorrow.